Hi, Girl Scouts. It's great to see you and to see you dancing a bit there while we had some tunes going. That was really fun to see. So my name is Katie Herstein, and I'm the Program and Events Manager at Girl Scouts of Colorado. So I'd like to introduce you to Inspiring Futures. We've been running this program since January of this year, where we've had a bunch of different accomplished women in a variety of professions, so you can come in and listen in and get inspired about your own future. So just admitting a few other people in as I'm chatting. So we have a partner that we work with to bring this series, and it's College Invest. So College Invest, they're Colorado's college savings program. So what it is, it's a savings plan for your education after high school. So they basically exist so your family can put money away for your inspired future. So it's kind of like a piggy bank, but the money that your parents and caregivers and grandparents, birthday money, things like that, that goes into it, when it's taken out, it's tax-free. So you don't have to pay taxes on that money. So it's quite a bonus, and it pays for your education after high school, for trade school, apprenticeship programs that give you real world work experience, and for colleges all across the country. So we're going to hear a quick message from the College Invest CEO about what she hopes that you'll get out of today's session.
Hi, I'm Angela Beyer, CEO of College Invest, and welcome to this episode of Inspiring Futures. Through Girl Scouts, you've learned that if you can dream it, you can do it. And here at College Invest, Colorado's education savings program, we help you get there. And you're never too young to begin to imagine your inspired future. So how will you impact this world? Will you run your own business, invent a new technology, or maybe even discover a life-saving cure? But wherever your inspiration takes you, a College Invest savings plan can help make your dreams a reality. Now, prepare to be inspired.
Awesome. So I'm just going to admit one more person. But before we get started, I just wanted to do some housekeeping items. So we are recording this session, and I'd love to see your faces. And when I put it out, when I record it and put it onto YouTube, I'll make sure that your faces can't be seen. So you can share them now, and when they're out in public, we won't have you facing off in the public. So next up is our promise and our law. And if anybody would love to join me, that would be awesome. Are you ready? On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. And then the Girl Scout law is, I will do my best to be honest and fair, friendly and helpful, considerate and caring, courageous and strong, responsible for what I say and do, and to respect myself and others, respect authority, use resources wisely, make the world a better place, and be a sister to every Girl Scout. Awesome. Okay. Well, next up, I'm going to introduce our guest tonight. So we have lawyer Stella Gore, and she's here to talk to you all about her education experience and her work experience. And you can ask her questions, and it's going to be a really fun event. So stop sharing my screen, and we'll welcome Stella. Hi, Stella.
Hi. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I am so excited to be here. And thank you so much for having me. I guess I'll start by introducing myself. I am a mergers and acquisitions and venture capital lawyer at a law firm in New York. And I guess what that means is I help companies, build through formation, and I kind of help them through every stage of their development, all the way through, major transactions like mergers and acquisitions, which is basically the process by which companies will combine with other companies or will buy or acquire another company. All right. So what do lawyers do? Does anybody know? No?
Feel free to
All right.
unmute yourself, or if you want to turn on your video too, you can chat with Stella and answer her questions.
All right. So lawyers do a lot of different things. They help individuals and businesses navigate the legal system. And because the legal system is so vast and so complex, there are so many different ways in which lawyers can help, which means that there are so many different types of lawyers. So one example that we usually see lawyers in is in court. We usually see lawyers advocating for clients before judges and juries. But it's not the only way to be a lawyer, which is great because I consider myself pretty shy and I would hate to have a job where I would be public speaking every day. But lawyers also work, behind the scenes in businesses, supporting companies, in their day-to-day tasks. They work in schools, they work in government, they even work in international human rights. There's a picture of Amal Clooney, who is, one of the, more famous human rights lawyers. All right, I've just included an image that that lists a few of the different types of lawyers, which include, lawyers who work in private sector and in businesses, like business lawyers and securities lawyers, but there are also family lawyers, and immigration lawyers and civil lawyers. There is just the whole gamut. Where do lawyers work? Does anyone have any idea? Yeah, Quinn? I think you're
They
muted.
work in court.
Yeah, that's one way. Yeah, that's one place. Anyone else? Danielle?
Law offices and courtrooms.
That's for sure. Yep. Anyone else? No? All right. Both are really good answers. They do work in law firms and businesses. They work in courtrooms, like you mentioned. They can be judges, so they can work, in the judiciary. They also work in public interest organizations and in social policy organizations. They help, decide and build a lot of the policies that we, that make the world a better place, which is really exciting. Why should you become a lawyer? All right. I think one of the coolest things about being a lawyer is helping others. I think it really is a service profession, and it's a space where you use your talents and you use your skill set to help other people achieve their goals, whether it be, in their businesses, whether it be, in their personal lives. But sometimes, it means helping people on their worst days or helping people achieve, their biggest dreams. It's a very intellectually challenging profession, which is great because you're never bored and you're always learning something new. And if you are into challenges, it's a great career. And like I mentioned before, there are so many different practice areas, which means that there is a space for everybody in this profession, which is really cool. And transferable skills is another piece. The skill set you gain from practicing law is so transferable in day-to-day life, which is really cool. And then earning potential is also another plus. The pay is generally pretty great. The median income for lawyers varies from city to city. but it can reach as high as over 200,000 for business lawyers in cities like New York. Education. So the first thing you have to do in order to be a lawyer is finish your undergraduate degree. And then you apply to law school. You do an exam called the law school admission test. And then you go to law school, you do 3 years of law school, and then you graduate, and then you write the bar. Any guesses as to how long you would be in school? Danielle, that's a good guess. What about you, Quinn?
7 years.
Yeah, right on the dot. You will be in school for 7 years. So 4 years for undergrad and 3 years for law school. So when I went through the process, I wrote the law school admission test in the summer after my 3rd year of undergrad. I spent all summer kind of studying, and I had like a summer job at the time. And so I studied and did my summer job. And then I wrote the exam in the fall of my final year of undergrad, applied that final year, and then I started law school the following September. After law school, I went to law school and I went to undergrad in Canada because I'm Canadian. I know I share that with Katie, but in Canada, after law school, in order to be called to the bar, you're required to do this process called articling, where you spend a full year working under another lawyer. It's like an apprenticeship type of process. And so after I graduated, I spent 1 year in Calgary, Alberta. Anybody ever heard of Calgary? No? Okay. You have, Ishana? Yep, awesome. So it's a mountainous, well, I guess it is close to the mountains. I would consider it a mountainous city, north of Colorado, north of Montana, actually. And yeah, I spent a year there, finished my articles there. And then I wrote I guess I did the bar admission in Alberta, and then I moved to Toronto. Anybody been to Toronto before? Oh, you have. Ishana, are you Canadian? Makes sense. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. So I spent a year I moved to Toronto, and then I was called to the bar in Toronto. Thank goodness I didn't have to article again. But after being called in Toronto, I moved to New York. So once I moved to New York, I had to write, I still have to, I have to write the bar exam in New York. So what happens with law is once you graduate, you have to write the bar exam and gain admission in any jurisdiction in which you want to work. So what that means is you can graduate law school, write the bar exam in Colorado, and you can work anywhere in Colorado. But if you decide to move to California, you'll have to write the bar exam in California in order to work there. So that's where I am right now in the process of gaining admission in New York. I just had to include this because unfortunately, law school is not the end of the process to becoming a lawyer. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yeah, Danielle?
How many hours do you work a day, or like how many hours do you work a day?
It depends. It really depends. So because my practice is transactional, what it means is it varies a lot based on what I'm working on. So I will have some weeks where I will work more than 60 hours, which means I'll work, more than 10 hours a day. And there are some weeks where, I don't have a lot of work. So it's peaks and valleys. And I personally, I love it about my work because I really I feel like, after a really, really busy period, having a slow period is really nice. And I feel excited during the really busy periods. But I do know that like there's other ways to practice this, and not every lawyer will have like the very volatile work schedules. Some people have, like 9 to 5, work experiences, which is really cool too.
And one more question. Do you ever have like days off in a week, or do you work every days of the week? Or like is there certain days, or it just depends?
It just depends. Like some days I don't have any work. Like on the weekend, some days I just like don't have to do anything on the weekend. But if I'm in the middle of a transaction and things are really busy, I'll work all day, every day, and through the weekend. And lawyers are usually on call. Sometimes, that means answering the phone, getting in meetings, and doing work on what would otherwise be days off or holidays for other
Thank
people.
you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
What
Somebody
made
has
you
their
choose
chat
that
hand up.
area of law?
Sorry, say that again.
What made you choose that area of law, transactional?
What made me choose transactional law? So I think I chose transactional for so many different, like I did my undergraduate degree in economics, and I was just always really into business. And then what I love about it is I really like the fact that I'm helping people who are building something so cool, and when I'm advising them and supporting them, it's on usually really positive terms. I'm never really like working with people on their worst days or through their worst experiences. It's kind of the opposite. I'm helping people build a company that they're very excited about, or I'm helping people like complete a transaction that's gonna, that's really beneficial for their businesses. And those kinds of things have always been really cool and make the experience like really exciting. Mhm.
I have a question. This is Katie. So for your undergrad degree, just any type of lawyer, is it any type of degree preferred over another when you're applying to law school?
No. So that is, I think, one of the best things about law school is you can do absolutely any undergraduate degree that you want. And so, I think which I think is great. And I think it's almost reflective of the fact that there are so many different spaces in law, that there's so many, like there's a space almost for everybody and for so many different interests. But if you do want to go to law school, I think my biggest advice would be to study something that you're really passionate about in undergrad, because one, it'll hopefully ensure that you do get good grades, because it'll be easy to study something that you're excited about. And two, it gives you opportunities to explore something that is really exciting and important to you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Looks like there's a
One more
question. in the
question.
chat.
Sure.
So
And-
with your area and during the time that the pandemic was like at its high point, was it kind of a bit stressful for you, or like can you give kind of like your experience during that time period?
Mm-hmm. So when the pandemic started, it was one year after I graduated law school. So I was really, really junior, really new. I didn't know, I don't think I really had much of a sense as to, how the market moves. And I still don't, I don't think anybody really does, but it was really scary, because I think at the time I had a slightly different practice. I still did corporate work, but I did transactional work. I did securities work, helping companies offer, their securities onto the public market. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of that work slowed down, and there were so many companies that were going under. And all of that was just really scary. It was a really somber type of time. But the good thing is, like with a lot of transactional work, things always bounce back. So things did bounce back in just a few months, which was good. What I think was really cool about the pandemic is it's changed the way in which a lot of transactional lawyers practice. So I mentioned that there are points where, in the midst of a transaction, I might be working really difficult hours. Now, because of the pandemic and work from home, those rough hours I can be working from home as opposed to, being in the office till past midnight. So that's been good. Any other questions?
See, there's 2 questions in the chat. I'm not sure if you can see those.
Let me see. All right. I don't think I can open up the chat. Yeah.
Well, I've got them right in front of me. So
Awesome.
one of them is, what percentage of people pass the bar exam?
Oh, yeah. It depends on the state. So in the US, each state has different bar admission statistics, and there's a different cutoff score in terms of, what's required to pass. So, you may have a score that allows you admission into one state, but won't allow you admission into another. I think Alaska is one of the higher cutoffs. So you might be able to practice in a state like Minnesota, but not use the same score to practice in Alaska. And then there's some states that have completely separate bar exams that test, slightly different topics. So it just depends. But yeah, the statistics aren't particularly great. But the reality is lots of it's a very learnable exam. And I think it really is about taking time to prepare.
And can you take it over again and
Yeah.
over again and over again?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of incredible people who've written it multiple times, including Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama and JFK, who wrote it 3 times actually in New York. So lots of people do write multiple times. Mm-hmm.
That's very good to know.
Yeah.
Keep trying.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm not sure I completely understand that. How many places can you practice? Do you mean how many businesses? Like, can you practice in more than one business? The person who put that question.
I think I meant how you have to be licensed in like she said, different states. Like, do you have various certifications to practice all over, I guess?
Yeah, you can practice everywhere, honestly.
Did you are you taking tests in various states or are you looking to expand or
I am called in 2 jurisdictions in Canada, so Alberta and Ontario, and I'm not called anywhere in the States yet. I'm in the process of writing the bar, and there's 2 other exams in addition to the bar, like the multi-state professional exam, or the MPRE. I'm not quite sure the full name or the full acronym, but then there's the specific New York law exam. So there's 3 exams in total to be called in New York in it, and I'm still in the process of going through that. But hopefully, this time next year I'll be called in New York, and we'll have 3 jurisdictions under my belt.
How long have you been a lawyer?
So this is my 5th year of being a lawyer. I'm still pretty junior. I like to think I'm still young and junior in my career. But yeah, it's been 5 years.
What type of lawyer are you?
I am a mergers and acquisitions and venture capital lawyer. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more what that means? I don't know, Girl Scouts, do you know what that means?
No.
Okay.
No, okay, no worries. So what that means is I help tech companies and startup companies form. I will help them, file the requisite documents that they need in order to become like a company under the laws of whichever state that they're going to be running their businesses in. And that means, hiring employees or building an office in the certain states. So I kind of assist them in kind of guiding them through the legal structures that they have to move through in wherever they're building. And then I just support them in their day-to-day work. And sometimes that means, answering, random questions that they might have about the law. Sometimes that could be questions about, given that they are, based in New York, can they hire somebody remotely in Texas? What are the rules around that? It can mean, helping them, negotiate financing. So if they need more money, or they need to include investors, or explore those types of avenues, I'll assist them with that and negotiate agreements around that. So yeah, that's a lot of what I do.
With the laws like constantly updating or changing, how do you stay abreast on like what's current, or what has been passed and things like that? Do y'all like have like a database, or like how do you stay updated on what's new?
Kind of. So there's not really a database. There's a lot of different resources, and changes in law. There have been so many changes in the laws in the past year, and a lot of them might not affect my practice. So there are some things that are really significant, or will change the advice that I would usually give clients, or would change the things that I do day to day. And when that happens, I usually I would usually know based on I would just read through like different resources that are available to me regularly. So given working in a law firm sometimes means like having access to resources like librarians and knowledge management people who are always providing us with the most up-to-date resources around our particular practice. So that's kind of like in terms of keeping abreast of my data in terms of like updates in law that affect my day-to-day work. That's kind of how I manage it. The other piece is once you gain admission to the bar, you have to continue to do continuing professional education. So you have to do a certain number of hours, depending on where you're barred. You have to do a certain number of hours of courses, or of lectures, or study sessions, or those conferences and things like that. And those are really good ways to make sure you're always keeping abreast of what's new in the legal world. Quinn, I see you have a question.
What do you do while you're like waiting for like the bar to like be barred?
Working. So yeah, I'm just working. So until I'm called to the bar, I have to like make sure that whenever I give legal advice, I make sure that my clients know that I'm not called to the bar in New York. So yeah.
There's a question in the chat. What kind of lawyer works to secure women's rights?
So lawyers that work to secure women's rights, there are lots of different lawyers who would kind of work in this space. And this would include employment lawyers. There's a really big case in Canada from years ago, but it's something that I remember we learned about in law school. It was a case in which a woman, was pregnant and then, lost her job as a result. That was a labor and employment lawyer who fought for women's rights in those spaces. There's women's rights lawyers who just take on cases where they explore issues and advocate for women in those kinds of circumstances. But there are so many different lawyers that can kind of work in this kind of space.
How
I
did
have
you
another
do-
question. Okay.
You can go first.
I was gonna ask, like, I don't know much about the actual field, but are paralegals like attached to every aspect of the different types of lawyers, or is it just under one like category?
I think with paralegals, it varies, and I think it varies based on jurisdiction. So when I was in Canada, I worked in 2 jurisdictions. One governed practice of paralegals, and then the other didn't really. So the one that governed the practice of paralegals had very specific rules as to like what paralegals could do and what they couldn't do. But some of those things meant that paralegals were able to represent clients in small claims court and things like that. And in terms of like the breadth of legal practice, I'm not sure, but I would believe that paralegals would likely have, you know, the same diversity and opportunities within law as well.
How did you feel becoming like like when you first became a lawyer? Because like, were you like kind of happy, but were you like stressed how maybe how difficult it'll be?
Yeah, I was very like, I was stressed even in law school. I was like, I definitely dealt a lot with imposter syndrome, and second guessing myself. And I still do, I still second guess myself, and I still, you know, navigate those feelings. But I think what has helped me is finding mentors in the profession, finding other women who are, you know, doing great things in this space, finding people who look like me, and you know, just building a network of people around me that reinforce, you know, this feeling that I do belong and that I can do this. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like it's an equal gender career? Like, do you have any have you faced any difficulties being a woman?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it is, and I think especially on the transactional side, there are some areas of law that are, you know, that have better gender parity and better representation of men and women, and more diversity in all ways. Unfortunately, corporate really isn't one of those spaces, and you know, it's building and it's growing. And I think part of that is by virtue of being in this space and kind of changing the narrative around what it looks like to be a corporate lawyer. That's really important to me. And I know it's important to a lot of other women and Black women in this space. So it's definitely a space that's still growing in those ways, for sure.
We have another question about criminal law and what type of lawyer, if one of the Girl Scouts wants to be a criminal lawyer. I know earlier it was asked is, you know, what kind of is the most heavy, I guess, negotiating type of law where you're sort of at it trying to get to a resolution.
Yeah.
And I always thought that might be criminal law, but I don't know.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Because with criminal, you're really negotiating on someone's life. Like, you're really advocating for something that's so significant. It's, you know, it's so much more than you know, money and those types. It's the costs and are really high, for sure. Mm-hmm. Cool. Quinn, I think you had a question.
Do you as a lawyer like have to research a lot of stuff?
I do, which is good and bad. I love to read, so I think it makes it kind of nice. I like the fact that I do a lot of reading for my work because it's something that I would be doing in general anyway. But I do have to do a lot of research. Some things I feel like over time, especially like laws that don't change and apply in lots of different circumstances. I feel like I learn over time, but I definitely do a lot of research for sure. Mm-hmm.
And we have a question about your typical day.
Oh, my typical day. My typical day really ranges, and it just depends on what I'm working on. So today, what did I do today? I had, a few meetings in the morning around I'm working on a merger transaction for a client that is that is going to be selling, I guess selling it is going to be like seller side of the transaction. So another company will be buying it. So I had meetings with the client this morning, along with the rest of my team. And then I had meetings with the lawyers that are representing the other side of this transaction in the afternoon. And then in between, I did a lot of research most of the day, just on points that are significant to drafting the merger agreement. And yeah, that's most of my day. It's meetings and doing research and sometimes drafting agreements. I guess that forms most of my day too.
Do you get to pick what kind of lawyer you want to be, or does your boss get to pick?
You definitely get to pick, which is the best part, I think, about being a lawyer. You get to pick today, you get to pick tomorrow. So if I were to decide that I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to practice like this anymore, there are a bunch of other areas of law that I could also pursue. And so the steps to becoming a corporate lawyer, like for example, the education to becoming a corporate lawyer in terms of schooling and degrees is exactly the same as becoming a criminal lawyer. And so when I started law, I practiced with another person who ended up deciding that she doesn't want to be a corporate lawyer, and she became a criminal lawyer after 3 years of practice. So I think it's really cool because you can always find a different space for you in case your interests ever do change.
All right, we have a question.
One more question.
Oh, go ahead.
I always wonder this. So when you like draft agreements and things of that nature, is it normally like templates or your credentials itself at the end of a like paperwork is it's what's most important, I guess?
It depends. It really depends. So part of I think Quinn asked earlier if I do research, and part of the research is going through databases, going through the internal system at my firm, going through Edgar, which is where a lot of like publicly filed documents for companies that are listed on the stock exchange would be. So I'd go through that and try to find situations where there are companies who've done things that my client wants to do, and learning how other people have done it in the past, trying to understand why other people have done it differently in a particular way in the past. If those circumstances are similar to what's happening with my client, part of the research process then is determining whether or not, what's the best way forward for my clients. And so I think in some situations there are, we will use templates, like just templates, meaning using agreements that we may have negotiated for another deal, and then scratch out parts that aren't relevant, write in parts that are relevant, and just building a better agreement based on something that's already been built up before.
Thank you.
Hi, Quinn, you had a question?
Like, what are some things that you can do in like elementary, middle school, and like high school to become a lawyer?
I think the best things you can do in elementary school and middle school and high school are like having fun, enjoying it, being present in the moment. Those things are really important, but also, you know, just trying to get a sense of what you like to learn, like, you know, areas that are exciting and, you know, exciting for you. If you go to school and you really like social studies, you know, like, you know, just lean into the areas of that you're enjoying, and you know, sometimes that's a great indicator of you know, a career that makes sense for you in law or outside, or maybe it's an indication of what you can do for undergrad before you apply to law school. Any other questions?
How old were you when you wanted to be a lawyer? Like, what got you in the path to be a lawyer? Like, did someone bring it up? And how
Sure.
old were you?
So when I don't remember, I think I was in high school when I started considering law. So I was born in a country called Sudan. And then in 2011, I was in high school and Sudan separated into two countries, North Sudan and South Sudan. I guess Sudan and South Sudan, sorry. But at the time, Sudan, like South Sudan was a brand new country. They had no constitution, and you know, it was a process. Like the news was on at all times, and I remember it just in my house a lot. Like everybody was talking about, you know, what is the Constitution going to look like, and what are the tax rules going to look like, and what does property ownership look like, and you know, what does rules around you know, around like the criminal law, around everything. Like this was a system that was just being built from the ground up, from scratch. And I remember at the time, a lot of the people who were writing the Constitution and building out what would become this country were lawyers. And I thought it was just the most incredible thing. You know, it was like a process of seeing of seeing lawyers just build something and have such an impact in developing this country and developing what, like the systems that, you know, that everybody would, you know, one day live through. And I thought that was really cool. So I decided I wanted to be a lawyer right around then. And then when I went to undergrad, it was still kind of at the back of my mind. And when I was in third year, I decided I would write the LSAT and apply. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have a question about law school, and if you have a preference of one that girls should be thinking about.
Yeah. So I think in terms of law school, it's never too early to think about it, but I think, you know, when it really matters is kind of when you're going into undergrad and going through undergrad. One, it's important when you're kind of finishing high school and going into undergrad, because it's important, your grades are going to be really important for law school. And so it's important to kind of go and be focused on making sure you're getting good grades and just working hard to make sure that you will be competitive for admissions purposes. And two, I don't think it's something that you should be stressed about either, because I do think that as long as you work hard and you know that, and you set this as a goal for yourself, it's all very achievable for sure.
Do you think there's any downsides to being a lawyer?
Yeah, there are a few. So I actually Googled this earlier today because I thought, you know, I'm saying all these positive things and I should probably temper it with like some downsides. I think one of the downsides is the long hours. But the reality is these are downsides for, you know, my practice and maybe certain other practices, but it's not a consistent downside across all lawyers entirely. So I would say long hours is one. And for me, sometimes work-life balance, just balancing work with like my personal time and trying to set boundaries between those things can be a really hard balance. But I think it gets better with time, because I do see a lot of people who are senior to me, you know, being able to successfully manage both. So yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Does anybody else have a question for Stella? No? Awesome. I'll turn my video back on. All right. Well, thank you so much, Stella. It was so informational. And I was telling you earlier, I have a daughter who is very interested in law. She's in high school in 10th grade, or grade 10 if you're from Canada. So I'm glad we're recording this for any girls like my daughter who had to miss this session, so that she can, you know, hear all about what it really is like, because it's hard to know exactly what a job is like unless you know someone who's actually doing it. So we really, really appreciate you giving us your knowledge, and we wish you all the best of luck with all of the things. Living in New York City must be a new thing to explore after living in Canada. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun, and I am really hopeful all of you become lawyers too.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's okay. But this has been really awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like we've had some girls that are very interested in it, and lots of good questions. So girls, if you want, you can unmute yourselves and give thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.